incredible, positive working relationship. And I think he's the best commissioner in the United States of America. I mean, he is just fantastic, and I appreciate you supporting his reelection. There are several things. One, we have to increase the potential for exports for agriculture. And I think it's our greatest export that North Carolina has to offer to the rest of the world, food to the rest of the world and other agricultural products. And one thing we can do is to help the infrastructure where you can get your product to and from the ports of export. And we've done several things. Our transportation plan, which Tony Tata, our DOT secretary, and Sharon Decker, my commerce secretary, it's going to be trying to connect the ports, and these are both inland ports, including one right here in Greensboro in Guilford County, and the ports in Morehead City and Charleston also. We've got to do some connection there, and even Norfolk for Elizabeth City area, Morehead City and Wilmington. All the ports we have to connect to, depending upon where you are in North Carolina. But what we have to do is we have to build the infrastructure and get the infrastructure to and from ports of trade and to the metro areas where your product might need to be sold. And our whole transportation vision is connecting the rural areas with the economic regions of this state and the region. Because if there is no connectivity, we're in trouble. And that's what our whole new transportation plan is. It's the mobility formula, which changed from what we used to call the equity formula in 1989. Do you remember when you would drive down North Carolina highways, even today, where the roads would go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes, back to 2 lanes, back to 4 lanes? You know what I'm talking about? And wherever it was 4 or 8 lanes, it would be named after a DOT member or a politician. You know what that means? We're making the decisions maybe based upon politics as opposed to where are the roads needed to get our produce and our people to and from trading and work. That's where how we ought to be making our road decisions. And the new mobility formula will be doing just that. And I think that will help the ag community tremendously. I also want to compliment Commissioner Troxler. We just finally finished last week. It's been a year-long project, but we finally finished approval for refrigeration at the Wilmington port. Can you believe we do not have any refrigeration right now at either Morehead or Wilmington for many of the pork and chicken products and other things that need refrigeration. For the first time, we're going to have it now due to, I really want to commend Commissioner Troxler because he pushed it hard and my office to push it hard. Tony Almeida made some phone calls last week. He's my economic policy advisor. So it's these little things that we're missing that can literally improve your exports in the tune of millions upon millions of dollars in the future. And that's what we need to find. We need to find the niche for the Wilmington and the Morehead ports and even the ports of trade in Guilford County here in the Triad area.
Good. We really appreciate your support, and you signed the North Carolina Farm Act of 2013. You signed that into law, I believe it was in May. We thank you for that support, Governor. That meant a lot. That meant a lot to
y'all pushed that, and y'all gave us some examples of some of the regulatory breakdowns. And John Scavarla, my Diener secretary, so far I'm getting very good feedback from you on the culture of customer service in Diener. We still have more to move, but we are trying to get you quick responses on how Diener and is working with the ag community compared to the past. And we're trying to cut through the bureaucracy and the red tape, and this legislation will help us do that too.
Do you have any, as we get ready for a short session? I think Speaker Tillis yesterday said the word short was really going to be the right word this year. It was going to go in May and come out in certainly by the 3rd week of June. So that is going to be short. Do you, as we talk about regulatory reform, obviously there's some other things. Do you have any ideas of some things that may be on tap for the short session as it relates to regulatory reform?
Probably the major emphasis in regulations and also helping the economy is I want to try to get more movement on energy and energy exploration. And I think there is a tie-in to your industry there in helping the rural areas with energy exploration. And I think there's great opportunities for energy exploration. And I'm a firm believer that North Carolina needs to get into the energy business and help spur our economy both in the rural and urban areas of North Carolina. When I go to Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan and of course Texas and Oklahoma are another ballpark, I think we ought to be participating in our energy independence right here in North Carolina. We are looking at some things that you're requesting. We made a major breakthrough in trying to give you more flexibility when the next tornado or hurricane comes to allow you to get your crops picked up and get them on trucks and get your fields taken care of as quick as possible. And that's where we want to really help you also in that area.
We applaud you very much on this, on your energy efforts. Our organization's in strong policy position to support your efforts on looking for energy sources that will benefit North Carolina, help us with, from a revenue standpoint, particularly some of our coastal counties and other efforts.
We think 3 industries are going to help continue to get North Carolina out of this recession. One is agriculture. You hear that? One is agriculture. And I say this when I give speeches in the most urban areas of North Carolina. We need to educate everyone more about the opportunities of agriculture and the exports. And you know what? Sometimes it takes a former urban mayor to help communicate that. But there's no doubt in my mind that ag is going to be one of the ways that North Carolina is going to move out of this recession, and because you're the ultimate entrepreneurs. The second industry, which I will never give up on, and I think for a while North Carolina started thinking we had to give up on, and I refuse to because I think it's retrending right now, and that's manufacturing. I'm firmly convinced we have to have an economy that builds things, makes things, produces things, and grows things, and innovates things. And I said that when I ran, and our tax policy is reflecting and rewarding those industries that builds things, makes things, grows things, produce things, and innovate things. And that's why one of the reasons we changed our tax policy is to reward productivity, reward people who actually produce and make and grow. Because we cannot live off the service industry or government jobs. The economy is not sustainable in that way. That's not how our U.S. economy was built, nor a North Carolina economy. And I just think the third area is energy. So ag, manufacturing, and energy, I think, are the best potential to put more money in your pockets and also more revenue in the pockets so we can put that reinvestment back into education and much needed infrastructure in the future.
Good. You mentioned tax policy, and obviously it was a big issue for the General Assembly, and we were proud to be engaged not only with your administration, you and your administration, but the General Assembly leadership as we talked about tax reform in the state. Going forward, do you see others? And we, in agriculture, we depend on some exemptions that are just tremendously, because agriculture, our farmers are big consumers. Do you see other efforts in going forward on tax reform that the state may need to be engaged in, Governor?
Well, the biggest part of tax reform that's not talked about, which I'm very proud of, and that is the death tax is no longer here in North Carolina, which I think is the estate tax. And you don't read about it in the newspapers much, but really that was targeting your industry. So you could pass on your farms and businesses on to the next generation without having to shut it down and the next generation not being able to afford it because of the tax that you're getting. To me, that was one of the great accomplishments of this legislative session. And I want to compliment Tom and Phil and my team for putting that together and getting that signed as part of tax reform. That was one really not talked about enough, in addition to lowering the corporate and sales tax. But we're looking at everything in tax policy. Sure. Constantly, we need to update our tax policy. We can't wait 60 years to update our tax policy again. And we need to constantly review what's working and what's not working, and how can we use the tax policy to spur economic growth and development. There is one part of tax policy which I think we still have a weakness in North Carolina, which somewhat has an impact on your industry, because of all the biotech entrepreneurship that's in North Carolina, which I think the reason we're getting biotech is because of ag. The reason these incredible biotech firms are talking to my administration right now to either expand in North Carolina or move to North Carolina is because of the access to the products right here in North Carolina. In fact, our major competition is Iowa. It's kind of interesting with one recruitment right now. And so having that access to agriculture helps us in biotech. But the one weakness of our economy, frankly, is we don't have enough venture capital money coming to North Carolina to spur the initial front-end investment. And then when the front-end investors do come and make money, our tax system kind of punishes them for the first round. So our tax system discourages risk-taking of venture capitalists for entrepreneurs. And those are the entrepreneurs that might be able to convert your crop into more profitable measures to either grow it or to convert it to other methods of production. And so I was out in California a couple weeks ago promoting North Carolina to venture capitalists who would be willing to invest money here and get a return, and I think we might have some success in that area.
I haven't seen the numbers lately. I'm assuming our state's revenues are continuing to grow this year. Or from a budgetary standpoint, I haven't.
Let me see.
You may not have those right at hand.
I want to give you accurate numbers here right now.
Just happen to have them with you.
Through the first 5 months of the fiscal year beginning July 1st, the collections are ahead of revenue expectations by $19.7 million. This is $2.7 million ahead of where we were last year at this time. Our corporate collections are up $62.1 million from what was projected. That's the good news. The tough news is our money last year went to Medicaid cost overruns. If we do not get control of Medicaid, we won't have money for anything else. And I'm going to have to make some very difficult decisions in this short term, and so will the legislature, and they're going to have the courage to do it against a lot of interest groups to reform our Medicaid system. Now, I'm getting hit right now a lot by not expanding Medicaid as part of Obamacare. And we're tempted to do it because there's free money for the first 3 years from the federal government. Free money? Have y'all heard that term before? Free money? The dilemma is after the third year, they start charging us 10%. And we don't know what 10% of what. So I believe in two things. One is don't make a deal when you don't have any idea what the future numbers are or forecasts are. And the second is, why don't you fix the current Medicaid system before you expand it? And the current Medicaid system is meant for women, the elderly, the disabled, and children. That's what Medicaid was meant for. And we've got to make sure we're delivering it right to them first before we expand it. And right now, we're not delivering it well to them, and we're bankrupting the state government coffers because we had a $500 million overrun. Think of the teacher raises we could have given with $500 million. It would have been extremely good raises. So I'm of the philosophy, you fix what you have before you expand. And sadly, in North Carolina, we had to fix our current broken system in that area. And if you have a $500 million forecast, misjudged forecast, I consider that broken. Regardless of what others might say, that's broken when your forecasts are off that much. So we're working through this, and that impacts every one of you. Just like unemployment compensation, just like workman's comp, Medicaid also impacts you, because if we don't fix it, we've got two choices. We either increase your taxes or cut services. Why don't we fix it first? So that's my logic, and then after we fix it, we go through that thought process again as what's the best next long-term step for North Carolina and its citizens.
We're going to take a question. I see Scott standing right here at the microphone. Let's take a question from the audience, Governor, if you don't mind.
I'd love it.
Governor, I just wanted to bring you greetings from the Selwyn Pub. And
Now you're getting me in trouble.
you segued right into
There's
exactly.
a member of the media right here. Now they're going to say I go to the Selwyn pub's a little.
It's a great place to eat. It's a great place to eat. You segued into exactly what my concern was. I left here last night from this grassroots organization and drove to Iredell County to participate in a school board meeting. And you explained our issue with finances and us understanding that there are only so many eggs in the basket, and you guys only had so many eggs last year to deal with when it came to financing our state operations. And obviously, I'm glad you cleared up or stated again the issue with Medicaid and Medicare. Our teachers are hurting.
Yeah.
I had business last night with the school system with administrators that got 6% pay raises making more than $100,000 a year. Our classroom teachers are hurting. We are a grassroots organization. I talked to a school board member in the back. There are teachers in this audience. You're a leader. What can you tell us as a leader that we can do, other than raising our own property taxes and funding a state system of education? What can we do locally in Guilford County, in Iredell County, in Hyde County to hold these hardworking educators up and be able to carry them through this tough time till you get Medicaid and taxation and revenue streams straightened out, to allow the legislature and the guys on both sides of the party who really recognize that technical education is important. But again, from a leader standpoint, what can we do to hold them up, to carry them through this tough time so they don't walk out the door and your initiative that you signed off first thing in your administration last year can't even be implemented because there's nobody in the classroom? We want to know what we can do in our communities.
Well, let me first tell you what we hope to do and give you a little background. Teachers have gotten a 1% pay raise one time in the past 5 to 6 years. One time, 1%. I had another 1% pay raise in my budget for them this year, which still wasn't enough. But due to the Medicaid, the legislature had no choice but to take that away because of the cost overruns. And I'm not going to criticize them because the numbers just didn't add up once I had done my budget. I tell you this right now, we have several goals for this legislative session, and I've already talked to Tom and Phil about it. This governor, and I think this legislature is going to have to find money for pay raises, not just now, but we also have to give them our long-term strategy on how we're going to support teachers for the next 5 to 10 years. And it's not just compensation, it's also how we treat them. And we're looking at such things as, first of all, we first have to find the money, and one way we find the money is we get control of Medicaid expenses and we streamline other parts of government and make the tough decisions we need there, which we're willing to do. The second thing is how to best pay teachers, and we're going to be going through that debate between now and February time period, and that is, do we do it across the board? Do we pay based upon performance? Do we pay new teachers more than we are now? Do we pay math and science teachers more than, say, a PE teacher because the market needs of math and science are higher? These are decisions we need to make. You just don't say we're going to give pay raises. You also say, what is the strategy of pay raises? What's the signal of motivation? Good teachers and also encouraging people to get in the teaching profession in the future. The next thing is we need to let teachers teach again. The biggest feedback I get for the last several years, both out of Washington and frankly out of Raleigh, they keep adding more and more and more tests. And we do need to measure the effectiveness, but so many of the tests overlap each other. And I don't have the exact number, but I think there are over 100 tests that teachers have to give in a year. Can you imagine? So at what point in time do you even use your teaching degree to teach, like we were all taught? I got my teaching degree from Catawba College in 1978. And I don't know if it'd be at use because all you have to do is pull out the test and teach by the test. Where we need to get back to teaching the basics while also teaching how to think, how to solve problems, and basic math and science and reading. And so this is where we're working with superintendents. I've got a teachers task force, and I've got the most incredible teachers on this teacher task force. Teachers of the year, STEMS teachers, elementary school teachers, high school teachers. You sit in the room with them and they're brilliant. And so we're going to hear from the best, and I'm going to get their recommendations and take those recommendations to my experts out of the executive branch and also to the legislature. And that's what we plan to do. Our biggest challenge is we got to find the money. And that's why we need to get into the energy business and other things. As you know, in farming and agriculture, the money just doesn't fall out of the sky when you want it. You got to create it. You got to produce it. And that's what I want to do as governor, so we can pay the teachers and we can pay for new roads and infrastructure in North Carolina. You just can't hope it to come. You don't win by hope. You win by creating a vision and a strategy to get there. I'll also say one other thing. My biggest challenge in government has been this, and it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. In Raleigh and in D.C., I'm seeing this really out of D.C. a lot now, they tend to introduce policy and talk about politics. The two subjects that you hear about in D.C. and through the media and even here in North Carolina is policy and politics. There's almost no discussion on execution or implementation. And I think that's one of the main problems we're having, for example, with the Obamacare. You can debate the policy, and I have very strong opinions on it, but no one really knew how to implement the policy and what the ramifications were, because they just talked about the policy and the politics of it. And one thing I'm fighting as the executive is even people on my side of the aisle might come up with a great idea, but it's my job as the chief operation officers, just like you have to do, is go, yeah, but before we do that, how do we implement it? Do we have the talent? Do we have the equipment? Do we have the information systems? Do we have the money? And that's where I'm really trying to change the frame of our discussion, is in the implementation of policy, not just the politics of policy. Whether it be Republican or Democrat, it doesn't make any difference because they both made those mistakes. And that's why I've been willing to I'm the outsider coming in, willing to ask those tough questions. Even with policy I agree on, I've had to go, but implementing it's going to cost more than you imagine. Do y'all have this in your business? You probably spent 80% of your time worrying about the day-to-day operations. Am I right? You're worried about the day-to-day operations. Well, that's where we need to put a lot more focus on in government too. That and customer service. And you're going to see some great changes in the DMV in the very near future, which will have an impact on you too. Tony Tata, we're fixing DMV. We're going to actually treat you as a customer as opposed to an adversary. We're going to thank you for doing business with the state of North Carolina when you go to a DMV in the very near. It's already happening. We're experimenting with some things right now.
Governor, quickly as we wrap up, I know I see some people from your staff over there giving me the high sign, but thank you for being with us this morning. Quickly, you've done a great job in some hires. Obviously, you've talked about wanting to be more customer friendly. You made a great hire. We've enjoyed the relationship that our organization, this industry has with John Scavarla, doing a great job for us. He's very accessible. Also,
he's brilliant.
In Sharon Decker, I've enjoyed the relationship that we've enjoyed with Sharon Decker as we talk about rural development. Obviously, rural development is important. And,
you have a commerce secretary, and Sharon Decker. She still lives in Rutherfordton, which is, by the way, one of the highest unemployment areas in the state at this point in time. And she is committed to the rural areas and agriculture. And I just can't tell you how good a job she's doing.
She was with us. She was with us in August, and she was invited.
She's a terrible speaker, though.
No, she's quite a dynamic speaker.
She's actually, if I could end by telling the story about Sharon, I've told it several times. Sharon is such a good speaker and dynamic and passionate and smart that I've told her, I said, Sharon, I'm not going to share the stage with you anymore. I mean, my ego can't take it, you know, and following you is just such a letdown for the audience. And she called me up that night and she said, Governor, I just want to let you know you're the headliner. You're the headliner. And I said, Sharon, when I lived here in Greensboro growing up, I remember when the Monkees came to the auditorium right down the street in 1968. And the Monkees were the headliners, but Jimi Hendrix was the backup band. I said, you're my Jimi Hendrix. And I'm very lucky to have a great team, and John and Jimmy and Tony, and I'm so proud. I surrounded myself with smart people smarter than me, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. And you're smarter than I am too, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of your work, and we need you in North Carolina, and I want you to make money too, okay?
Governor, have you got the governor's mansion decorated for Christmas? You and the First Lady, have you got your Christmas shopping done? Or
I haven't even started Christmas shopping. I'm on the road. I'm putting a lot of hours in right now, but some beautiful Christmas trees grown in North Carolina. We want to push, with all due respect to the artificial trees, we want to push homegrown trees in North Carolina. There's some great, the economy is dependent upon it, especially out in the West. We really appreciate that. But I think the thing I have to look forward to, my wife and I are about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary, so that's what I'm looking forward to right now. Thank you all very much. It's an honor.
Governor, thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us, and please know that this organization is a friend of yours, and any way we can help you. Always.
Thank you all very much. God bless each one of you. Merry Christmas. Thank you.